Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Tuesday live stream. Today we're going to be working in Figma, and we're going to discuss the ins and outs of creating frames for prototypes that have vertical or horizontal or both scrolling attached to them. And let's see here, we are in Figma, so let's go ahead and start a new design file. And there we go, looking pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and turn Keycaster on so everyone can see what we're working with here. There we go, I'm gonna get Figma to play ball. All right, and yeah, Keycaster's working. So as far as the prototyping is concerned, of course, we need to make sure that everything is in frames. That is how we that's how we work in prototypes. Everything has to be in frames. That's how you link one frame to another. And as such, we will start by adding a frame to the canvas. And there's, of course, a number of ways to do that. I rely on keyboard shortcuts almost exclusively, and so I pressed F on my keyboard to select the frame tool, and we could also come up here to the toolbar, and in the region tools, if you click the drop down arrow, we have a select box here where we can choose between frame and slice. And so we'll go ahead and click frame, and now we have our frame tool. And of course, if we wanted to create a frame with a width and a height of our liking, we can just click and drag in the canvas to create a frame of any size. Or alternatively, with our frame tool selected, if we look in the right sidebar, that is to say the design panel here on the right, we have a variety of devices that we can choose from. And most of the creation that I've been doing is on phone viewports, and I am particularly fond of the iPhone 13 Pro Max viewport or frame, as it gives me the most real estate to work with. And if we click that frame, we can see that it's added to the canvas here in Figma. And I'm just going to adjust this camera right quick here. Let's see here. Make sure I'm fully in the shot there. There, that should work a little bit better. And all right, so we have our frame. And we can't go into prototyping yet because we only have one frame, and we need to add some content to this frame for this to work out. And so as far as the scrolling is concerned, we need to think about what situations we would want to feature vertical scrolling or horizontal scrolling, or both in. And a common use of horizontal scrolling would be an image carousel, or perhaps a categories section where you could swipe between different, swipe left and right to see different categories. And so that's one common use that you'll see online very frequently, possibly at e-commerce, for example, where on mobile viewports where you have a small amount of space, you frequently see left and right swipe sections. And an idea of when you would want to use vertical scrolling would be possibly in a very long menu, and you didn't want to scroll the entire screen, just maybe a section of the screen or the viewport. You just want to scroll through that and maybe select items, or you might have a lot of checkboxes there, something like that. You might also put a table or tabled data inside a frame of such sort. And lastly, we have the ability to create frames wherein we can have both horizontal and vertical scrolling. And a good idea of when you might encounter such a section or a frame in a product would be a map. And that's a pretty good way to add a map feature to one of your products in Figma for prototyping purposes anyway. And so you would have a picture of a map, and the picture would be much larger than the frame, of course, and so the user could click or tap and drag around the map in the frame to sort of get an idea of where a location was located, or where a business was situated, or anything like that. And so I will give some examples of each of those, And to begin with, as I stated, we need some additional content here to make sense of all of these ideas. And so I will go ahead and just add some text right quick. And of course, to select the type tool, we can click the, text tool. We can click the text tool up here in the toolbar. And when I have my mouse on it, or my cursor over it, we can see that the shortcut for the text tool is T. And so press T to select the type tool. And we can, much like the frame, we can, when we see the crosshair in the canvas, we can click and drag to create a text area of a size of our liking, and we can begin typing here. Of course, there will be a break line every time we get to the end of the bounding box of the text area. Alternatively, we can just click once to create a single line or sort of automatic width text field or text area that will just continue to grow provided we keep typing. And that's what I'm going to go with. And so let's see here. I will create a bit of text here that says slideshow. I'm going to change this font up. Let's try outfit. Oh, semi-bold, and let's get that a little bit larger, maybe 64. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and center that. And below this text here where it says slideshow, I want to create a section or a frame that we can swipe back and forth to see various photos. And we'll use just some photos from Unsplash that I have saved to this hard drive. And to add the images, all we need to do is, the keyboard command for that is Shift-Command-K, or I guess Control-Alt-K, maybe, Shift-Control-Alt, I don't know what it is on Windows. And let's just go through our hard drive right quick and find some images. And like I said, I saved some earlier via Unsplash. And I'm going to go ahead and paste all of them that I selected. They're all bicycle themed because that is a project I'm working on. However, obviously you can make a slideshow with whatever photos you would like to. And let's see here. Because they're all different sizes, I would create a mask for all of these so they would all be sort of the same size. However, I don't want to add too many topics to this stream. And so let's see here, I'll move them over there. I kind of want these to all be the same size. And so let's see here, I'm going to move that bike picture there. I'm going to, I'll just resize them this way. Again, you'd probably want to do this in a different way, depending on what your images look like. But for me, this is working out just fine because I don't mind if they get cropped a little bit. And let's zoom out a bit here. I'm getting somewhat lined up. Okay, looking good so far. All right, and I had many more photos than I thought I did. I think some of these are .webps. Okay, so it looks like I have more than 6, but we'll just stick with 6 right now. And so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those. Go ahead and get rid of those extra 2 images. And so here are the images that I want to feature in my slideshow. And let's see, they actually might still be a bit too large, so I'll select all of them and just resize them. That way that's looking pretty good. Maybe make them a bit more square or something like that. Okay, yeah, I'm happy with the way those are looking for now. They suit the purpose of this just fine. And these images, to work in a horizontal scrolling slideshow, they will need to be in a frame. And to do that, I'll need to add a new frame. And so let's see here. First, I want to make sure that the frame height is, and this doesn't necessarily have to be the case, but this is what works for me. I'm going to create a frame that has the same height as all my images. And so let's see what the height is. We're looking at 189 is our height, and I can see that in the right sidebar, the design panel here at the top. We have 189, so I'll press F to activate the frame tool, and I will click and drag. I'll create a frame that is the same width as the parent frame, the iPhone 13 Pro Max frame, and that's almost right. That's 181 pixels tall, and so we're going to make that 189 by changing the figure here in the design panel here on the right. And so I have my frame, and of course frames being frames and not groups, they can exist on their own without any child elements. And so I have my frame here. It itself is a child of iPhone 13 Pro Max parent frame. I'm going to rename frame 1 to slideshow. Oh no, I got rid of my text here. Okay, there we go. All right, so I have my text, which is returned because I got rid of it by accident, and then I have my slideshow frame. And what I'm going to do is, let's see here, my frame. I'm going to make my frame large enough. At the beginning, I'm going to resize it, and then I'm going to change its size back again. I want to make sure all my images appear correctly inside the slideshow frame. So I have all my images selected, all the layers selected, all these different bicycle theme images, and with these layers selected, I'm going to click and drag them into the frame, the layer called slideshow, and of course we see that they have disappeared, but not to worry, and that is because I have clip content turned on. Let's see here, and of course they're not going to show up because they're all here on the side, and clip content is turned on for iPhone 13 Pro Max. And so just to make this a bit easier, let's go ahead and drag that frame out. There we go. So I have my slideshow frame, and I want to align all my images inside of it. So let's start to align them. And I am aware that I can't see the frame, but I know where the frame is. And let's see here. So if I click here, I can see that all my images are in the frame. And to double check that all the images are inside the slideshow frame, I can look here at the left sidebar, that is the layers panel, and see that I have all my bike images inside of, that is to say, they are child layers of slideshow. And this is looking good, and I can see that my parent frame here is called slideshow. I didn't make it quite large enough to accommodate all these photos, so I can fix that in a number of ways. If I select the frame, I can click and drag on the bounding box here. Whoop. That's not going to play ball. So I can, with the slideshow selected, with the frame selected, I can click resize to fit, which will automatically resize the frame to include all of the child elements. And let's see here, if I wanted to, for example, change the, and I will want to do this, it looks like we have almost equal spacing between all these elements except for the fourth and the fifth. There is slightly less space here than there is in every single other one. And so what I want to do is apply auto layout, so I make sure all my spacing works out just fine. And so to apply auto layout, I will make sure the frame is selected, and I will click auto layout here in the right sidebar. And as we can see, on click, it automatically fixed the spacing issue that I had, and now it looks like the space between items is set to 41, and so there's 41 pixels between each item. And if I wanted to adjust that, of course I could click and scrub in a new value if I wanted to, or I could just type in a new value such as 32. And let's see here, the alignment is irrelevant in this example because they're all the same size, and so I'm not going to bother to mess with the interactive grid here. And so we have our slideshow, and let's see here, if I place it here inside of, so yeah, what I just did, slideshow, as we can see here in the layers panel on the left, the left sidebar, slideshow is not a child element of the iPhone 13 Pro Max frame, and that's why it's able to show the entirety of the slideshow. However, if I click and drag this layer inside of the iPhone 13 Pro Max frame, it becomes the parent frame. And because this frame, the parent frame, has clip content turned on, it's going to not show any of the overflow information or overflow elements, which includes a lot of the photos. And of course, if we wanted to see them, we could always unselect clip content, and we'll see any of the layer information, or any of the layer content, I should say, that's outside the bounding box. But I'm going to go ahead and keep clip content turned on for now. And so we have, we're getting there, we're getting there. We have our slideshow child frame inside of the iPhone 13 Pro Max 1 frame, and so we're heading in the right direction. And excuse me, we're not quite ready yet, because if we go to prototype here in the right sidebar, one of the first things we'll want to do is to change the option to allow scrolling for the frame. That is not the default behavior. The default behavior is no scrolling, and we see that here under the section titled Overflow Scrolling. And overflow scrolling is anything that's outside the clip content boundary, and it's currently, of course, default is set to no scrolling. So if we select horizontal scrolling, you may be tempted to think, we're there, we're ready, and this is going to have some horizontal scrolling in the prototype. But that is not the case, and we know that is not the case because there is this very small icon that has appeared to the left of the select box here. And if we mouse over that, we have a message here, and it says, for scrolling to work on this frame, and this frame is referring to a frame I created called Slideshow, the content needs to be bigger than the frame. And so another way of wording that is the frame itself needs to be smaller than the entirety of all the content. Otherwise, you won't be able to scroll, because what you are scrolling is anything that's considered overflow. You're scrolling the overflow into view. And since everything is visible, because I automatically resized this frame, it's not going to like that whatsoever. And so I want to go back to design. I'm going to change the width of the slideshow frame so that it is the width of the frame is exactly the width of its parent frame, the iPhone 13 Pro Max. And so now, if we go back to prototype, and the shortcut for alternating between design and prototype is hold down Shift and press E. And if we go to prototype, we'll see that we no longer have that icon there, that warning icon that tells us, or informative icon that tells us that we need to adjust the size of our frame for horizontal scrolling to work. And so what we can do now is go ahead and test and see if this works. And let's see here, I'm going to stay in prototype mode. I'm going to select the parent frame, the iPhone 13 Pro Max frame. And just to make this a bit prettier, I'm going to go into the prototype options, and it knows what device to choose because it's based on the frame, which is based on one of the default Figma frames we have already. And so it's set to iPhone 13 Pro Max. Very good. We can even change the model, which is really cool. So I'm going to go ahead and change that to gold, something with a good contrast, and then we'll change the background color to, I don't know, something like that blue there. And I'm anxiously awaiting the day where you can use a background image for the preview, but as it stands, we can only use a single color, a hex value. And I'm going to go ahead and close that and select my frame, and when we click this present button in the top right, we will enter into the it'll bring up a new tab in Figma. It'll appear right here to the right of Untitled, and that will be our prototype. And let's see what that looks like. I'm going to go ahead and click present, and it will think about it for a second. Okay, and here is our prototype. It's looking pretty good right now. And the question is this slideshow, is this area right here, this frame called slideshow, do we have horizontal scroll? Well, if I click and drag, we do indeed have some horizontal scrolling going on here. And so this is exactly what we want to see. And so this is looking pretty good. And yeah, I'm really digging the way this looks. And of course, if you wanted to, you can make each one of these images you could link that to another screen in your prototype, or you could attach it to an overlay, or have any number of animations or transitions attached to these images. And of course, it's not limited to just images. Of course, if we wanted to, let's say, add some text to this underneath each one of these, we would select the slideshow frame. Let's go back to the design. And as it's, okay, so yeah, it looks like the height has some vertical resizing automatically attached to it, which is a hug. And if we look right above it, the height is grayed out, and so we are not allowed access to that because it's set to hug. And what hug means is the frame height is automatic. It's automatically calculated based on the contents. And if we want to change the height of that, we'll need to change it from hug contents to fixed height, which, as we can see here, we can now adjust the height of our slideshow frame. And so 230 sounds fine. And let's see here. Let's go ahead and add some text. That's far too large. Let's tie 24. I'm going to drag that into the frame. And because this frame has auto layout attached to it, it's going to consider bike 1 to be one of the items it wants to align via the alignment function. And to tell Figma not to do that, we can click this button here that says absolute position, which will remove this type layer from the auto layout function, and it will not obey the auto layout commands anymore. And so very useful function to know how to use, but more importantly when to use. Be very judicious when you're using the absolute position function because you want to make sure everything still works afterward. And so we could continue to add text. I won't add a caption for each one of these because that would just be overkill. And the point is merely to illustrate that we can add as many elements to this as we want to add to it. And so I'm going to select my slideshow, and I'm going to resize it to fit just to, oh, let's see here. Okay. Oh, right. So when you have any elements inside the slide, when you have any elements inside of a frame that have absolute positioning attached to them, and you do automatic resize to fit, it's not going, even though like bike 1 and bike 2, these two type layers are children of the frame, it's not the frame when you select resize to fit is not going to take those into account. It's only going to take into account all the elements that are aligned based on the auto layout feature we have here. And so I'm going to go ahead and change that back to fixed height, and we're going to make that a bit larger. There we go. And let's see here, I'm going to go back to, you'll notice that let's go ahead and maximize that. You'll notice that I did not close the tab that has the prototype running in it. The prototype, when it's open in a tab, it updates automatically based on any changes that you make to the frames in the canvas, in the open file. And so there's no reason to close it and reopen it each time. That's sort of I frequently do that out of habit, but it is a bit of a waste of time, especially if your prototype is huge and takes forever to load. You might get away with just keeping it open. I will warn you and say that there have been some situations where I've made a lot of changes to the prototype, kept the prototype tab open, and then when I went back to the tab, it did not work as expected, and there are a few, I don't exactly know, I couldn't tell you exactly what causes them, but there are a few bugs in Figma wherein prototype doesn't always respond in the way that you would expect. And so if you have your prototype tab open and you make some changes and you go back to your prototype tab and you notice that some things look wrong and you know that you did them correctly, feel free to just close the tab and click the present play button and start the prototype over again, and very frequently it'll begin to act appropriately after that. And so we have some, let's see here. Okay, looks like we're having a bit of an issue here, and let's go prototype, horizontal scrolling. Okay, and let's see here. Content needs to be bigger than the frame. Okay, yeah, so when I resized to fit, I forgot my own, what I just talked about. And so horizontal scrolling will not work because when I did resize to fit, the frame, of course, resized to fit, and so it included all of its child elements that weren't absolutely positioned. So let's go ahead and drag that the edge of the bounding box back over here. And as we can see, that warning that we saw previously has since gone away. And so let's go back to our prototype and let's see here. Oh, and just a quick useful keyboard shortcut. If you are prototyping and you need to restart the prototype, instead of closing the prototype tab and clicking present again, you can simply press the R button. And of course, you pressing it on this page won't look like anything has changed. However, because we only have one frame, and so it's reloading the same frame, and since nothing has changed, we won't see it. But if you were on a different screen in your prototype, and you pressed R, it'll return the prototype. It'll restart, it'll refresh, but it'll also take you back to the first screen of the prototype, and so it's something to keep in mind. And as we can see, since we resized the child layer, or the child frame called slideshow, to the exact width of the parent frame called iPhone 13 Pro Max, we can see that we have regained our scrolling behavior because the frame is now smaller than the entirety of the content, all of its child layers. And so, yeah, we're looking pretty good right here. And just so there is no confusion, I only made the slideshow frame as wide as the iPhone 13 Pro Max 1 parent frame, or Pro Max parent frame, because I thought it would look good. The slideshow layer doesn't necessarily have to be the exact width for it to work. And to illustrate that, I can make it much smaller, let's say maybe the width of just one image. And if we go back to our, let's see here, if we go back to our slideshow here and represent, let's see here, there we go. And so you can have the frame that you have established horizontal scrolling with as wide, or to whatever size you would like it to be. It doesn't necessarily have to match the width or the height of the parent frame, which in this case is the iPhone frame. And so we can see that that is working just fine now. And so let's go back here. I want to actually rename this to slideshow horiz for slideshow horizontal. Let's try 48, looking pretty good. Okay, and I'm going to, let's see here, let's reduce the space there. I'm going to copy that, or I'm going to duplicate it, move it down, and let's see. Let's make another slideshow, but this time we're going to do exactly the opposite. And let's see here, I'm going to rename my layers right quick. Slideshow horiz for the first one, and we'll slide that slideshow vert, and there we go. Okay, so now we're going to do basically exactly the same thing, except now we're going to make the slideshow vertical. And we already sort of set ourselves up to do that quickly because in the original slideshow, I applied auto layout to the frame, and with the vertical slideshow frame selected, as we can see, we have horizontal direction applied, and horizontal direction that tells the auto layout frame which direction all the child layers, all the content needs to display, and horizontal direction puts all the content left to right. And so if we change it to vertical direction, it doesn't look like much of a change was made. However, if we, let's see here, yeah, we can see a tiny bit of, yeah, if I mouse over, we can see the position of all the elements now. We can see that they're up and down, they're vertically aligned. With the exception, you will notice we have a type layer here that says bike 1, and then off to the right of that in the dotted blue line, that's our type layer for bike 2. And the reason that they're floating out there is, recall that I applied, let's see, I'll select it, I applied absolute position to these two type layers, and as such, they're going to stay put no matter what. They're not considered a part of the auto layout scheme. They're part of the frame, the vertical slideshow frame, and we know that because we can see that they're child elements. However, with the absolute position option turned on, they're going to stay put, and we can tell that absolute position is turned on. If we look here in the left sidebar, we can see that we have the normal icon for the type layer, which is the capital serif T, but there are we have these little brackets on each corner, and so that indicates, that's a visual indicator that absolute positioning is turned on. And so I'm going to go ahead and delete those type layers just for a better looking slideshow. And I don't want, it looks like we have a little bit of the second image poking out from the bottom there, so I'm going to change the size of the vertical slideshow frame. And now the only thing that we need to do is, with that frame selected, Shift E, or we can click on the prototype text up here in the right sidebar. We'll notice that we're still set to vertical scrolling, and so if we were to go back into the prototype right now, we would notice that we couldn't do any up and down swiping, just left and right, and it wouldn't really go, nothing would show up exactly. There would be, nothing would really happen, or we wouldn't be able to see any new pictures in the slideshow if we kept it on horizontal scrolling. So we'll want to go ahead and change that to vertical scrolling, and we don't have a warning icon, and so everything should be good to go. And so let's go back to our prototype tab, and as we can see here, it updated, I should say. And now when I click and drag, we can see that our slideshow, our vertical slideshow, is now working appropriately. And yeah, so it's pretty much the same idea as the horizontal slideshow. Once you get everything set up, you just need to change the direction, the direction in the auto layout area, which is right here. We have auto layout, and then you'll want to change the direction from horizontal to vertical, or vice versa, depending on what you're changing to. And then once you've changed that in the prototype mode here on the right sidebar, you want to make sure that your overflow scrolling matches the type of scrolling that you intend to do. And a way to remember that is you'll want your overflow scrolling to match the type. There we go. You'll want it to match the direction that you have set up here in auto layout. So if it's set to vertical direction, you're going to want to have it set to vertical scrolling, and horizontal direction, you want to have it set to horizontal scrolling. That way you'll ensure everything's working out. And then lastly, I want to give an example of how we might do or when a good time to use vertical and horizontal scrolling might be. And so what is our, let's see here, we're 184 by 189 is the size of our frame here, and I'm going to, we can create a new frame size, that's fine. I'll create a new frame about that size, go ahead and center it, and this frame is going to be called, map. And let's see, I'm going to put that at the bottom. There we go. I know everything's aligned kind of funny. And so I don't have an image for map, and we're going to go ahead and grab one real quick. So let's see here. I'm going to fire up my browser, and it's going to take a second. I think I had a lot of frames attached to it. And so let's go to Google Maps. Let's scroll out a bit, not that it matters that much. Okay, looking fine. We have North Kansas City here, and I'm going to take a screenshot. And so I'll do Command-Shift-4 on a Mac, and I want to take a screenshot of about that size. I'll copy that to the clipboard and delete that because I'm not going to need it for later. Come back into Figma and paste the image into the canvas. And ideally, you wouldn't want to paste images into your canvas. You would want to save them to the hard drive, and then you would want to place image, which is either Shift-Command-K on a Mac keyboard, or if you come here to the Shapes tools or the Shape Tools area in the toolbar and you click the down arrow for the select box, the very last option is Place Image. And if you select that, it'll bring up Finder or Windows Explorer, and you'll want to find the saved image that you have on your hard drive. But I'm not going to save this document, and so I'm okay with just plopping in the copied screenshot I have here. And so I have my image here off to the right, but I'm going to rename this Map of North KC. There we go. But I want to put that into my map frame, which is down here. And so I can either click and drag in the canvas until it's inside the map frame, or I can click and drag in the left sidebar, the layers panel, click and drag that to where it's inside of the map. It's going to disappear, of course, because I have clip content turned on the map frame, and the map image itself is way over here. And so if I drag it, it's going to appear there. Let's get you back in your frame there. Excuse me. And for the purposes of this demonstration, I want the map to be centered horizontally and vertically inside of its parent frame, which is called map. And so with the map image selected, if I come over here to the right sidebar, the design panel, I will select align horizontal centers as well as align vertical centers. And as we can see here, looking at the bounding box with respect to the map frame, the map image is perfectly, or as perfect as it's going to get, centered inside of it. And so let's see here. Let's go ahead and select our map frame, and unlike the horizontal and the vertical slideshow frames, I don't have a need to apply auto layout to this frame. It only has one child and it's aligned the way I want it to be aligned. And so again, in the absence of multiple layers, I don't feel the need to apply auto layout to it. And okay, so let's think about our rules for setting up scrolling in Figma. Only applies to frames. Okay, check. We have our map frame here. And the frame size needs to be smaller than the entirety of the children in the frame. And we know that's the case if we show the bounding box of the child layer, which is an image I've renamed Map of North KC. We can see that it's significantly larger than its parent frame, map. And so if I go to prototype with this frame selected, and if I select one of the overflow scrolling options, in this case horizontal and vertical scrolling, we'll notice that we don't have this warning icon right here getting onto us about not having, or getting onto us about having a frame the same size or larger than the child elements, the child layers. And so I expect this to work. And so let's go back to our prototype, and hey, here's our cool map at the bottom. And we can see that if we click and drag, we have vertical and horizontal scrolling. And this mirrors, or this simulates pretty well the map behavior that you would see in an app such as Yelp comes to mind. If you go to the map view and you use, depending on your device, one finger or two fingers, you can swipe around the screen and move the map around. And so that's similar to what we have here. And so this is a pretty decent way to simulate what a map would be like on your, or in your project for your product. And so that is an example of horizontal scrolling. As you see, we have our slideshow that goes left and right on swipe here. Vertical scrolling, which is our vertical slideshow that we have here, as well as horizontal plus vertical scrolling that we have here. And I hope that that was abundantly clear, and that that about does it for this stream. I wanted to make this one pretty relaxed, a pretty easy stream to follow. I know sometimes I can get a bit into the weeds on subjects, and so I hope you enjoyed this. And of course, if you did enjoy this stream, you can subscribe to me on Twitch, and you can sign up for notifications so you will get a message whenever I am about to go live or whenever I do go live. And of course, you can find me, you will be able to find me on any of the chat applications I'm frequently on. That's Skype, Discord, and Slack. Of course, if you have any questions about Figma or UX in general, you can go ahead and drop me a line there. Otherwise, I will see you this Friday for another Figma Friday. It could be another topic. I'm not set on what it is yet. But until then, talk to you later.